Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, the weather has been very, very wet the last day or so. The rain has ceased, it appears, this morning, and today will probably dry out a bit, although a tremendous amount of rain has fallen. Getting very close to that, flooding areas, in some areas at least, the low-lying areas, low water crossings and things of that nature. But a lot of rain has fallen. Like I said, today should be a fairly dry day precipitation-wise. And then it starts again Friday and into the weekend. And Friday's looking like there could be a real chance of severe weather, especially west of here, western Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas. But this area does have a certain level of threat. So potential for tornadoes, hail, high winds, and more rain. So for those of you folks in that area, certainly be getting ready, because looks like a wild week. I mean, talk about crazy weather. We went from spontaneous winter. It just like popped up out of nowhere, and we had super cold and quite a bit of snow. And then immediately it went from that to very, very dry, windy, fairly warm. And then it was like a light switch. We went from very, very dry to just getting pummeled with rain. So, and then now the severe weather. We're already starting on the severe weather, and I'd said a while back, and so far it's looking to be true, that the prediction this year is that the severe weather may be higher than normal. So be getting ready for that. Well, all kinds of stuff's happened. So yesterday Congress voted on a bill that would release sexual misconduct files of representatives, of congressmen. And they overwhelmingly voted it down. So much for transparency, so much for, justice for victims, and, a nation of laws, and all this kind of stuff. They overwhelmingly voted it down. Both Republicans and Democrats. So yeah, they don't want you to know that kind of stuff. They don't want you to know what they're actually doing. The DOJ is deleting Epstein files that were released, redacted, mind you, but released. They're not releasing the rest of them. All that's done, right? I mean, we can go around and we can invade a country and kidnap their leader, and then we can go into another country and kill their leader and start wars with them, and then we can bomb other countries randomly, take out drug cartel members, and all that kind of stuff. But we just can't seem to simply arrest sexual predators in this country. It's sickening to me. Even if everything else that this administration has done would have been on point, perfect. And it's not, but let's just pretend for a moment it was. This one thing is enough for me. Because like I've said before, so many people talk about the victims of the past, during the Epstein, scandal and all this kind of stuff. Do you really think that the people that were involved in that just stopped doing it because Epstein is out of the picture? No, these people are still doing this stuff is still going on. It may not be led by Epstein, but there's still people doing this kind of stuff. Still children coming up missing every year, being abducted. Still women being abducted, women being forced into, sex work and stuff. All kinds of stuff. I guess we're not going to deal with that. And that's a huge sticking point for me, among everything else. So that's just my opinion. Financial news. We now are at let's just say a low since at least 2000 to 2008. So depending on the numbers, somewhere between the great financial crisis of 2008 and maybe even back to 2020. So in the last 25 years or so, new home purchases are the lowest they've been since then. And job numbers are the lowest. There's been the most layoffs. In fact, it's been over 25 years since we've seen the amount of layoffs that are happening right now. Those two things right there just should tell you that the economy is not doing good. If people are being laid off in those numbers, that means businesses aren't doing well, so they can't keep employees. And if people aren't purchasing homes, that's always been a major gauge in America. You know, if the economy's doing well, people are buying homes. If the economy's doing bad, they're not. If people aren't buying homes and they're getting laid off work, I mean, that's two major, I don't care whatever other stuff you look at, that's very definitive right there on how bad the economy is. Most of the other numbers that are showing that look good, those numbers come from the fact that, you know, the top 5, maybe 10% of the population that has the wealth is doing all the purchasing and stuff. So anyways, not looking good. And it's going to get worse because gas prices are going up. They've gone up like 40 cents in the last week or so. And every indication based on this war and what's happening is it's just going to get worse. You know, countries are shutting down oil and gas production. Shipping is coming to a halt. You know, in that region, a lot of it, you know, places, you know, ships are being bombed, oil fields are being bombed. It's not looking good. So anyways, just that's something you need to be getting ready for. Speaking of being bombed, there's been some interesting reports coming out since all of this started, and I've reported on a little bit. I think it was yesterday or the day before, but some newer reports. There was in the news talking about a missile that was headed towards Turkey, and NATO defense anti-air defense systems took down this missile that was headed towards Turkey. And then there's another report in Azerbaijan that a drone struck there or was attacking them. And of course, everyone is immediately knee-jerk reaction. Well, it's Iran. It's Iran doing this. Iran has come out and said, we're not doing this. This is not ours. These are not ours. And, you know, you could say, well, they're lying. You know, you can't trust them. Except, at least in one instance, that there was a claim that a drone struck Cyprus, a UK base in Cyprus. UK's come out and said, yeah, we investigated, and that's right. It didn't come from Iran. It's not an Iranian. It looks like it's Iranian, but it's not. So there's a growing speculation that these are being done purposeful to try to drag more people into this. Is it Israel? Is it the United States? Could be both, one or the other. But I find this interesting that we're trying to get things bigger, and they are getting bigger. You know, yesterday I reported that the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War, whatever he wants to call himself, has said now that they're expecting this to last 8 weeks. You know, first it was 2 or 3, 4, 5 weeks. Now it's 8 weeks. Well, interesting. Central Command, U.S. Central Command, has put in a request to the Pentagon that they're saying that they need more intelligence analysts in regards to the Iranian conflict. Okay, and that they're going to need them for at least 100 days and possibly till September. So, you know, there's another indicator that this is going to last probably a lot longer than what's being told. And I said that from the beginning, and most of you already knew that. Also, it's a lot of this, it's hard to confirm, but there is definitely a growing amount of circumstantial evidence and rumors that maybe things aren't going as well as they're being told, which I've told you that. There's a growing amount of Americans now that are saying that they truly believe that the death toll on the American side is much, much higher than what we're being told. There's actually former generals, former CIA agents that are coming out and saying, based on, you know, the things they're being told through their channels and looking at the evidence, that there has to be a much higher death toll than what's being told. So there's that. There's basically the only one that's not confirming it's U.S. government, but news just about everywhere is confirming that at least now 3 F-15 U.S. jets have been shot down by by Iran, which is the first time that's ever happened, that these jets have been, these, I believe, Strike Eagles have been shot down. The U.S. is saying it's not true. Many other news sources, not just in Iran, but all over, are saying that it is true. That's a kind of a black eye. There's a lot of evidence showing that Iran is actually holding its own pretty well, and that the United States especially, but also Israel, was really caught off guard by this, very unprepared. They prepared for a few days of real conflict, and now it looks like it's going to drag out for weeks and months at least, and there's no plan to deal with that. They thought that Iran would be much easier to take down, and I just want to, even if I don't know that this one we're going to see any definitive victor. This is just a thought. I could be completely wrong. I would doubt that we're going to hear a definitive victor in this, but if we don't come out cleanly and clearly victorious, that's going to really hurt the United States on a global stage. If you remember back, if you've been watching my videos for a while, a couple of years ago, I was talking quite a bit about Ray Dalio's book, and how the cycle of empires happen, and in that, and he was talking about, each cycle is a new world order. We had Spain at one time that was the leader of the world order. Before them it was the Danish, and then it was the British after all that, and then now it's been us. And so now there's this fight once again for the world order. If you remember, in that, one of the last things that happened before the current leader of the world order kind of collapses is that they start a war. They start a war with arrogance, believing that they are still the top dog, and they do that to prove to the world that they're in charge. And they usually don't make it, and then after, that's where things really start rapidly declining. If, and I'm not saying it is, but if that's where we are at, you should really start preparing, not just for the amount of things that will happen during this war, potentials for shortages and violent attacks, terrorist attacks, suspension of elections. All those things can happen, but then it's the aftermath. If we do not become clearly victorious in this, it's very likely that the world could just see us as a dying thing and move on. It's already been happening ahead of time with the world kind of walking away from the dollar more and more, watching that decline, and everyone move to gold or to other currencies. And so if we're not clearly victorious in this, and right now the way things are looking, that may be kind of tough for us, then that's bad. Now the other thing is if it gets to that bad, especially for the Israelis, will they pull the nuke card and use that? I think it's very possible. So it's interesting. There was another report. The Kremlin was asked, spokesperson for the Kremlin up in Russia was asked, is Russia willing to help and all this kind of stuff? And they said Iran hasn't even asked us for help. They've not even asked us, indicating that Iran may be holding its own pretty good. And Iran still claims that they have not been using their best weapons yet, that they're using old stockpiles and lesser quality weapons, that they still have an immense amount of stockpile and a lot of new stuff. So, and they were saying, they haven't even used their weapons in a naval fashion, against ships and stuff, that they haven't yet. What they're saying is that they have not yet really released the full force of what they're capable of. If that's true, that could just be them talking and lying and all that. But if that's true, that could be very troublesome. So we need to be really preparing. We maybe it's possible. It's possible that we're watching America in its last little death, throes and stuff. So it's just get ready, folks. I think that there's a lot going on, and a lot that's kind of that could happen because of all this. I think that this is, and many people are already calling it a world war, and I think that possibly it is, because there are other factors involved in this. China is assisting in intelligence. It's not good. It's not good, and there's also the question of what does this mean for Donald Trump? Is he going to face an impeachment and not finish his term, and JD Vance gets in there and things get even worse? Is he going to declare some kind of martial law and suspend the elections? I don't know. But things are pretty uncertain, and they're not looking good. I know it's like, oh, it's another doomsday video. Well, I mean, what else? That's what's happening. We're living it right now. And if you consider yourself a prepper, but yet you can't handle hearing this kind of stuff, then you have a big problem. Because if this bothers you, then you're never going to survive the real stuff when it starts kicking in. So get your houses in order and prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.